Good morning and welcome to Jobcare Live this wonderful Tuesday morning. I'm Rowley and I work at Jobcare and I'm going to be a host for this morning. Today we're starting another set of our courses, so settle in. I hope you've got a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and feel free to make yourself at home in the comments. So good morning already to Pallavi, Kevin, Kavish, JD. You're all saying hi in the comments. Really appreciate that. So thanks for saying hi. We'll be keeping an eye on those and kind of interacting with those as we go through the morning. So appreciate that. And any questions you have, feel free to throw them in there, and we'll ask them to our speaker when we get a chance. And we'll definitely have some questions and answers at the time. We're looking to spend about from now till approximately 10:30 having a conversation and hearing a little bit from our speaker this morning. So settle in, you'll get a sense of where we're going with this. Feel free to ask questions and interact in the comments. Hopefully it'll be insightful. Certainly every time I hear Ken speaking, it's a challenge. It changes the way I think, and that's always a good thing. So I see Sheila on there, Paula, Aggie, Cahill, Ray, morning all. Thanks for joining us. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually introduce our speaker. This morning we have Ken Harborne, who is the CEO and Managing Director of Myers. The names escape me, but he'll tell us now in a sec. Good morning, Ken. How are you? Come on, join us.
Good morning, Rowley. I'm great, thanks.
Great. So Ken has been supporting us for a number of years now at Jobcare. He's a kind of a firm kind of long-term supporter of all that we do, and he's got a great story that he'll kind of get in to tell us. But Ken, how are you this morning?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Really good. The market's better than it was. There's jobs out there, which helps all of us. I'm in the recruitment space, so yeah, feeling very good, very positive. Looking forward to hopefully sharing a couple of helpful tips with everybody on the call.
Great, amazing, and it's really good to hear that, because I think we can get kind of hung up in the bad news cycle that's often kind of going on. So it's good to hear that there's jobs out there, and I can definitely confirm that for all of the 5 job nets we ran last year, people were getting work during the pandemic, during the crisis, and during our job nets. So there was definitely work. Now work has changed, and hope maybe we'll be able to tap into that a little bit. But how did you initially get connected with Jobcare?
I just, what I've done all my life is get people jobs. So, we as a business, and I personally just wanted to, add value to something, and so this seemed like the most natural fit. I understand completely the issues around trying to find work for professionals or non-professionals, to be honest. So just kind of got to help. I got to do a couple of talks, and the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed it, and the more value I think I put on JobNet and Jobcare. I just think it's a fantastic course for anybody. I'm fully behind it. I think it's probably the best way for anybody to secure work and to get themselves job ready. So I just think it's a fantastic initiative. And anybody on the call today, you should be very excited. I mean, if you go in and do the work, you follow the program, you have a great chance of getting a role. I know the market's a little bit tougher than it was, 2 years ago, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was this time last year. So there's lots of opportunity out there, and you're in a fantastic position, honestly, to get yourself into a new role or a new job. So it's exciting times for everybody, I think, on this course.
Yeah, that's super to hear, and I'd absolutely mirror that. You're in the right place. So rather than going into kind of getting you to introduce yourself, talking to me, I know it's built into what you're going to share and the story that you have as part of our presentation. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to hand over to you, and any kind of questions that come up, we'll either jump in and deal with them, or we'll keep them to the end. So Ken, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can fire up your slides there, and we'll take it from there, and I'll check back in with you in a little while. Thanks, Ken.
Fantastic. Yeah, appreciate that, Rowley, and welcome all. As I said, this is the first step. Just turning up today is a really big step for everybody on the call here. I think it's It's just a great course. So what I'm going to do is just jump straight in, as Rolly said, and give you a little bit of a background, firstly on me, what I'm about, and what the presentation's about today. So I'm 22 years getting people jobs. So I've done very little else all my career, but worked in recruitment and finding people roles, understanding the market, understanding how that works is pretty much what I've done all my life. So really, what I want to do is just share a couple of points with you today that are genuinely practical, real sort of tips and hints that'll help you along the way. So my focus is the recruiter's perspective, which is how does recruitment work? How do you interact with recruiters? And I'll go through all of that in my presentation. So, and I thought I'd share, you see on point 2 there, redundancy. So I, back in the last recession, 2008, I ran the US operations of a big multinational recruitment company, the Irish operations, I should say. And, like anything, everything was great, everything was flying. I was doing incredibly well, etc., growing a great team. And then 2008 hit. What happened to me was my colleague in Spain called me. It was the Whit weekend. It was June, and he rang me. It was a bank holiday here, and he said they've shut me down. I said, "What do you mean?" He ran Spain, and I said, "What do you mean they've shut you down?" He said, "Yeah, they literally arrived today, told me we're shutting down the office, and we're all outside the door after 5 years of service." I couldn't believe what I heard. They were visiting me the next day, and I knew we were doing better than Spain, but lo and behold, they arrived on the scene for a meeting, and they shut the office down, no warning, and we were all outside in the pub at 12 o'clock after 7 years sort of doing great work for a business. And that was that. So I guess the reason I'm telling you that is I totally understand what it's like to be out of work. I totally understand what that feels like. I totally understand mentally how that works too. So what I did was I just got busy real quick. Didn't sort of spend too much time thinking about it. I just knew getting action focused would help me. And it did. So I set up Wallace Myers International, which is the recruitment company I own. We've had a great run up until last March when we got hammered. I had to make a bunch of redundancies myself, certainly in a different way than I was made redundant. But we're coming out of this now, and and we're actually ferociously busy at the moment, which is great. So my job today is kind of just to give you a kind of a no holds barred, just honest view of the recruitment, of how recruitment works from the inside, kind of under the iceberg, and then really to point out that I'm here to help. And even after this call, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, or certainly, and really important, if you have any questions, and even if I know it's the first session you're doing, but if you have any sort of questions, do stick your hand up virtually and ask those questions. I'm happy to answer as honestly as I can. So I'll jump on. So I guess the first thing is there's I put a picture in there because that's probably what it's like when you're starting up, trying to understand how to deal with recruiters. So look, there's two types of recruiters. There's agency recruiters and there are in-house recruiters. So really my next few slides are just about the reality. So look, this is an information exchange. My purpose here is to tell you what it's about. It's not about, I'm not trying to motivate you in the next slides, but the important thing to realize as I go through the next couple of slides is that it's all about just understanding the reality, accepting the reality, and controlling your response. I'm going to come back to that point on multiple occasions. How you react to things, is very, very important when you're dealing with recruiters. So let me jump on and talk about the first batch. And normally what I do is, in a presentation like this, is I'd ask, what's your experience like being with recruiters? Typically, I get a show of hands to say, a smaller population to say, I've had a great experience with recruiters. I'd get sort of a bunch of people who've had a neutral experience with recruiters, and I'd have probably a larger population who would have had a negative experience with recruiters. And all of that is normal because, like any service industry, you're going to get different types of organizations, different types of people, and different types of experiences. And that's all normal. But again, going back to my original point, I think it's about how you control that, how you deal with, you know, what you see as rejection or a bad experience, and not letting it affect you. So I think that's key. So like I said, controlling your response. So look, I've got to give you the 4 sort of kind of usual recruitment types you're going to see. So on line 2 there, you'll see rookie, gateway recruiter, corporate effective, and class act. So rookies are most of the people you're gonna deal with who work for recruitment agencies. So rookies are people with sort of 0 to 2 years experience in agency recruitment. So you can know by looking at their LinkedIn profile. Rookies in recruitment, first thing to say to you is most people don't last in recruitment. There's lots of reasons for that. It's a tough role. A lot of people aren't good at it. A lot of people don't like it when they get involved in it. So a whole bunch of the people that you're dealing with in that space are going to be rookies. In my space in recruitment, are going to be rookies. So 0 to 2 years experience in recruitment. So you know, they're naturally not gonna you know, have deep relationships in the market or know everything there is to know about recruitment. So just understand that really. The next bunch are the gateway recruiters. So there's a lot of people get into our sector with a view to getting into something else. It's kind of a stepstone into human resources, or maybe into a multinational, or maybe into in-house recruitment. So there's a lot of people, again, come in and out of recruitment. Again, they're not long-term there. They get in, they might do okay. They don't place a lot of people. So you're probably talking that those first 2 categories are probably 80% of the recruitment population. So naturally, if you're out looking for a role and you're dealing with those 2 types of recruiters, they're not going to be the most effective for you, but unfortunately, they represent most of our industry, 80%, I'd say. I'll move on to the curt but effective. There's a lot of recruiters out there who wouldn't win an award for Customer Service Person of the Year, but they're very effective. They get a lot of people jobs. So there's a reason some recruiters might be curt but effective with you, and I'll go on to that in a sec. But just because somebody maybe isn't getting back to you, etc., don't take that personally, basically. But they might be a person who can get you a job. The last bunch is a much rarer breed. Is probably a 10% of the recruitment population is the class act. They're sort of people that just will come back to you. They'll give you feedback. They're very good with the clients. They're long-standing in companies and recruitment companies, and typically you'll find them effective people. You know, anybody with sort of 4 years plus in our industry, you know, you'll find career recruiters, I call them, and they're typically really knowledgeable people. They're the ones you'd want to stay close to as a person looking for a job throughout your career as well, because we can place people 3 or 4 times in their career. So the reality of a recruitment business, the reason, you know, you have you've only got 10% who are really good and will sort of interact with you properly, is because recruitment is like this. I own an agency, so the only revenue coming into an agency is the money that we get from placements from companies. So every recruiter in my business and every other business has to make placements. It's very pressurized, it's very target driven, because if they're not making money, they're costing money. So either you're making placements or you're not making placements. If you're making placements, well done in here. If you're not making placements, you're fired. Now, you might leave yourself, but that's just how it works. That's the harsh reality. So that's why maybe people don't get back to you. So there's a couple of things there. Recruiters don't get paid for giving you advice. As much as they may want to, you know, as much as they don't get paid for that. So if they're giving 10 candidates advice, you know, that are not relevant to their jobs, that's taking a chunk of their time, which is taken away from their time to be successful in terms of placing people. So that's just behind the scenes. And then recruiters speaking with people who are unsuitable for roles is another thing. So recruiters don't recruiters having time to speak with people who are unsuitable for roles. And the last thing I think is, if you're looking for a career change, agency recruiters are not the people for you. We can't help you change careers. So there's kind of no point. I can give you advice here because I'm doing this, but there's no point in talking to recruiters if you're a chef and you're looking to get into financial services. That recruiters aren't the way to go. Find another path. And also agencies, we get a ton of applications, so sometimes you're just swamped. with candidates, particularly when there's a lot of candidates out there. So, but here's the thing. So, you might have all of these rookies, gateway recruiters, whoever. None of that matters. All you need is a job, right? So the worst recruiter might have the best jobs, even though you might be impressed with them, they might be interacting with you well. They may have a good job for you. So that's why controlling your response is very important, and keeping a good relationship with a recruiter is very important. So that's agencies. And here's the reality, and here's what I really want you to focus on. So this is a picture of a black hole. And the definition of a black hole is a place where things apparently disappear without trace. So I put in a CVs in there in our case, because what I'd normally go around and say, put your hand up, those people who have sent their CVs off to an application and heard nothing back. And pretty much everybody would have their hand up. So what happens is, when you do that over a period of time and you're not hearing back, you start, instead of looking external, you look internal, and that affects your confidence and the ready brick aura you have in terms of who you are as a really good candidate, the spark, the good stuff, the great person. This sort of stuff affects that in a big way. And so what I want you to do is just understand that and treat it like a natural phenomenon, like a black hole. So in other words, you send your CVs out, don't beat up yourself just because it doesn't come back. Just accept that's just nature. That's nature. It just goes out there, it doesn't come back. If it does come back, that's brilliant, but naturally I send stuff out, it doesn't come back. It's nothing to do with me, it's just a natural phenomenon. And I think that's a really good point. So moving on to in-house recruiters. So what a lot of mid to large companies now have, the majority of them have in-house recruitment teams. So they have recruiters, that's their job, to find staff for those organizations. Again, very similar. It's so important that you control your response to not hearing back and all of those things. I've gone through a couple of categories of in-house recruiters just to give you an open and honest view of them. There's a whole bunch of unvalued recruiters. So what big companies tend to, or a lot of companies, not every company do, is they'll hire a recruiter and they say, all right, there you go, you're a recruiter, you take care of recruitment. Recruitment can't happen in isolation. You've got to work with managers who respect the recruitment process, who will give you a brief on the role and all of that. But unfortunately, they just give it to them, and it ends up being an administrative function. So for you, when you're sending your CV off and you've someone who doesn't get respect from the company, doesn't have any interaction with the line managers, doesn't really understand the roles, naturally that's not a good thing, and for feedback. So there's also a whole bunch of the chunk of people that leave agency recruitment. A lot of people are unsuccessful. They're failed at our job, and they'll have a year or two experience. So companies say, hey, listen, you've got 1 to 2 years experience on your CV in recruitment, so you look good, you sound good, so I'm going to hire you. And guess what? They weren't good in agency, so they're not going to be good there. So the truth is, there's a lot of people in those spaces who are not good recruiters, and they're recruiting for those companies, and you're trying to get in there and they're not good at their job. And that's just a fact. There's a whole bunch of them too. There's also the crazy busy HR person. So you get a lot of companies who will give it to human resources. Now, human resources have a ton of other stuff to do. It's very onerous work these days. So adding recruitment onto that, you can imagine if they're getting a bunch of CVs for a bunch of jobs on top of doing their learning and development and their disciplinaries and all of that, and their business partnering. And so you're not going to get a lot of time, and you're certainly not going to get a lot of feedback. And then there's the true business partners. And again, like agency, they're a rare breed. There's probably about 10%. It's about a company respecting recruitment, and it's about a good recruiter who sort of pushes back to line managers, makes sure they get feedback so they can understand, interacts with candidates and gives them closure. So there is a proportion of those, but it's a very small proportion. So you, as the job seeker out there dealing with recruiters, just need to understand, again, that's the natural flow, and it's okay. It's cool. I don't mind. It's just is what it is, and don't let it affect you. Because again, your aura and who you are is the most important thing about you as a candidate. I want to hire a great person, and I need to see a great person. If you've been beaten up by the lack of feedback, etc., that's not the best version of you. So So no feedback, you don't get it because, you know, they don't get it. They're afraid to ask for it sometimes. They're disorganized. They get a huge volume of CVs and they need to match requirements. So CVs, in-house recruiters, it's very much a box ticking exercise. So if you don't look good on paper, some people look good on paper. A lot of people don't look good on paper, particularly if you're around 35 years and you've got a ton of experience, really broad experience. That doesn't suit that model. So, you know, there's other models, there's other ways, but don't worry about just not hearing back on your CV. So, you know, the other thing to say about in-house recruiters, though, is when they're not dealing with agencies, when companies aren't dealing with agencies, they don't have to pay a fee. So sometimes companies might be a bit more flexible. So I certainly wouldn't be giving up on any of these. I'd continue to go and send your CV in for roles you think you're good at. Sometimes they can be flexible and say, hey, you know, he or she doesn't have, you know, 2 things on the list, but you know what, you know, let's take them on anyway. That can happen. So, so look, as I said, this is the reality. This is not sort of, I'm not trying to motivate you here. I'm just an exchange of information, and I think it's important just to understand it so you can tackle the market yourself. So our relationship with companies, so ours meaning agencies, we deal with in-house recruiters and companies, right? So they hire us to do a fee-worthy job. So they pay us a lot of money to find people for them. So the bar is very high. So they're extra picky with us. So you're applying to us, we're representing you. So they're going to be super picky. So that's the first thing to say to you. So the other thing you might ask yourself a lot is, I've sent my CV in. You know, I'm perfect for that job. Why didn't I get an interview for that job? There's lots of reasons under the iceberg for that. So again, don't take that too personally. A lot of times you don't know what's going on in terms of the job spec, the culture, what they're looking for. There might be stuff that they're asking for that you don't see on the job spec. There's lots of reasons for it, but usually there's concrete reasons for it. So don't internalize that. Again, if you're outside the box, you're out of contention. So I can't, you know, most recruiters can't, 80% of recruiters can't put you forward for a job if you're not right on paper. Occasionally they can. So if I've got a relationship with a good company, I've been dealing with it for 10 years, you walk in the door and your CV doesn't look good, but I know culturally you're a great fit for them. I'll ring that company and say, listen, Bob, you've got to meet Mary. She's fantastic. Here's why. Now they'll say, okay, Ken, listen, I trust you. I've been dealing with you 10 years. So send Mary down to me. So that can happen. But it's less. So again, you just need to understand how it works. That's all. Look, stuff happens, and so rather than thinking it's me and what's wrong with me, stuff goes on hold. Stuff gets filled internally. Stuff gets, you know, there's long delays, etc., etc. Someone leaves, and it's really important to know the job spec is the tip of the iceberg. So typically job specs are general, and they don't really tell you, you know, 90% of what's going on in there. You have to operate that way, but just understand that, you know, no feedback is the norm, and you know, you have to judge your response to that, or sort of work your response to that. So look, that's the end of that, the harshness and just the honest, sort of candid understanding of recruiters. But I wanted to share that with you because I think it's important to know what you're dealing with when you go out there into the market. So what I normally ask is, at this point, is I'd say, look, okay, with all that sort of harshness I've just gone through and the reality of things, you know, are there any advantages working with recruiters? And people put their hand up and usually say 1 or 2 things that there are. The truth is there absolutely are huge advantages to working with recruiters. And I'm going back to agency recruiters now, right? So that's people who deal with companies. So there are massive advantages. So how do I make the most of my agency interview? Now, I understand we're all virtual now, we're all doing video calls, but the same stuff applies, frankly. The same stuff applies. So let me jump in and give you some good stuff now. So we're going to start getting sort of productive and positive and constructive in terms of good stuff we can give you to tackle this now that we've got over the harsh reality of it. What advantages? Well, the first thing, like my point a minute ago, culture fit matching. I've been down, I've met with the client, I know what they look for in a person. So I can tell straight away if you're a right fit for that organization or not, you know. So, you know, I remember going out to a client visit with a tech company. I went down in a suit and I stood out like a sore thumb. I mean, there were people with baseball caps turned sideways, sitting on 2 chairs, and I walked in my suit. And so the same principle is the same. The great thing about LinkedIn is you can now see what people look like on LinkedIn. You can get a sense of the culture. But a recruiter can give you a really firm handle on what they look for in a person, what sort of person matches with that company. So having that conversation with a recruiter is a really good thing. So they can offer you, recruiters like me or whoever else can offer you unexpected opportunities, not just this role. So if you're, I don't know, an accountant, and you're dealing with an accountancy recruiter, well, naturally, if I place accountants all day, every day, and you're an accountant, maybe you're not right for this, or you've applied for a certain job and you're not suitable. But once you're on my radar and you're a good candidate, I'm going to have a job for you at some point. Now, it mightn't be, tomorrow, it might be in 6 months' time, it could be in 3 months' time, who knows? But the whole point is I can introduce you to a world of jobs in your specialist area if you build up a relationship with me, if I'm a specialist in your area. So in terms of prep, you can get general prep, you'd never get direct. Again, you go for an interview cold with an ad response from a job board, you can do your external research. But if I'm dealing with that company, I'll tell you what to say, who you're meeting, what they're like, what they have for breakfast, all of that sort of stuff. That's really important to get an insight, to be able to prep better for an interview. So that's a huge advantage with a recruiter. Here's a financial reality. It doesn't really make that much of a difference, but I want to give you the fact anyway, is recruiters bill on basic salary. So the more money you get, the more money the recruiter gets. So, it's in their interest to get you a higher salary, interestingly enough. So that's a small point. It wouldn't motivate me personally, but look, it's just a plus anyway. So the other thing is it's a long-term relationship. Like I said to you, I've placed people 4 times in their career, it's amazing how a long-term relationship, if you're a good candidate and I placed you and you did a good job, even now, fostering that relationship over a period of time can be hugely advantageous for you. So down the line, if not even now. So, and the truth is, good recruiters will do everything they can to get you the job. So if you're a good candidate, I'm putting you forward for a job in a company, right? So I want you to get that job. If you get that job, I get paid. So even selfishly, if I wasn't interested in helping people, I'd want to help you get a job. So it's in my interest to do that. So, and then again, specific advice on what you need to do to secure the role. So critical information. So there's huge advantages with a recruiter. Okay. So now you got to meet, and this is funny. There's a lot of lazy recruiters out there who don't meet people. But that's nearly a disadvantage for you. Try and get to meet people, build up relationships with them if you can. In general, meaning virtual these days, right? So the same things apply as you would in person, or a lot of the same things. So I had a candidate who I really respected, thought was excellent, put her forward for a senior marketing job, and she blew the interview, and I couldn't believe it. She said, no. I said, what was wrong? I asked the feedback, and the client said eye contact was terrible. And I think it was the video. She just didn't know where to look on the video. I'm learning this, by the way, as well. So eye contact in terms of video is like eye contact in person. You just can't connect with somebody unless you've got good eye contact with them. So very small. So smiling, again, it's all about, it's about you. Once you get an opportunity to interview, it's about building a bit of rapport, smiling. I like her. I like him. That's what I want to be saying. I want that person in the team. Most people hire these days on, I'd like to have a beer with that person. That's really what they're talking about, or a coffee or whatever. So are you doing that, or are you just a frozen sort of interviewee who just answers questions? So, that smiling is important. Arrive early on a video call, same thing. Look like them. What do they look like? Get onto LinkedIn. Look, have a sense of how they look. A LinkedIn picture tells you a lot. In fact, I could tell very quickly if someone's suitable or not just by looking at their LinkedIn picture, believe it or not. So there you go. Do judge a book by its cover. That's unfortunately the reality in our space, and you need to understand that. So you need to become that, or as close to it as you can. So, shaving, and I say the reason I put shaving in is there people got very lazy. in terms of presentation because it's a video call for some reason. So, basic hygiene, in terms of brushing your hair, shaving, all of that. I mean, that's, some people don't, which is crazy. And it's just basic stuff. Get a second opinion. What do I look like? Significant other, do you think I look okay? All of that sort of stuff. And then a bit of weather talk. Hey, Brian, thanks a mil for the interview. Really appreciate it. How you doing the pandemic? How you guys doing? Are you all right? You don't have to be the chatty type to do a bit of weather talk. You just ask them something that you're curious about. It builds a bit of rapport, so it's not all as rigid. So all of those things are important. They have always been important. So what are you doing in your agency meeting? And sorry, all of that goes with interviews in general. But agencies, what are you looking to do? The big mistake people make, I think, is when you're dealing with an agent, is that I'm only dealing with the agent. So when it gets to the company, I'm gonna be stronger. I mean, you need to impress them because they're representing you. So impressing is what it's all about. So I need to show that I'm applying for this job. I'm interviewing with this agent. So I need to keep on message. What am I trying to get across here? That I'm good at X, Y, and Z, and I'm a suitable candidate. So don't forget that when you're doing your agency interview. So one of the things you may find is a lot of people, I can't see you, but I've no doubt a lot of people here would have a ton of experience on this call. So, all of a sudden you're that person, then you're interviewing one of those rookies is interviewing you. I mean, you might be 20 years their senior. They might be unimpressive and not know a lot about your space. So what? The important thing is you need to impress, because the worst recruiter might get you the best job. Remember that. So that's important. Be honest and open. Everybody has, anybody who's not working has issues that they need to overcome to get a job. Now, this program's great for this, but you need to be honest. If you might have, mental health issues, gaps in your CV, jumpy on your CV, all sorts of things. So the best thing you can be is just open and honest. Now, there's a narrative on how to say that and how to do that, but I think it's really important that you're just open and upfront about things, and that actually can be an advantage, not a disadvantage. Attitude is everything. So really good attitude in this person. So just come across enthusiastically, genuinely interested. Listening, hugely important. So listening to the questions, listening to what they're saying. Take advice. As you go on your journey, the jobs you don't get sometimes are the best things for picking up advice and seeking criticism. A lot of people who likes criticism? I mean, nobody loves criticism, but that little thing, that little nugget, that little piece of information might be the one big obstacle that's stopping you from getting a job. Now, this program, again, is brilliant for that, so you'll get a lot of that. But when you're talking to recruiters can tell you a lot about the market and your sector. So seek criticism, take advice. The question is, if I'm a quality recruiter, will I put my reputation on the line for you? And if the answer is no, I'm not doing it, because I value my relationship with my client and I represent quality. And if you're not coming across in a quality way, I'm not putting you forward. So really important that you impress with your agency interview. Don't treat it like a stepping stone. Treat it just like you would a company directly. So my advice, I think this is LinkedIn, right? So recruiters on LinkedIn, and normally I'd ask a question is, look, is there an advantage, being on LinkedIn firstly, and what advantages are there? And I'd get sort of different opinions on that. And so what I'm doing, I'm just going to focus a slide specifically on LinkedIn and advice on LinkedIn. So I think the first thing I'll say is LinkedIn is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. So you need to be on there. I don't care what space you're in. You need to be on there. And look, there may be a space I haven't heard of. You don't need to be on there, but I think you need to be on there. So if you're sitting in a chair saying, don't do that. You're on this course. I'm telling you, you need to be on there. It's good advice. It'll help you get a job, and you're going to hear that message probably from LinkedIn directly. That brushing up your profile and all that. It really is a critical tool. So the first thing is, if you're not connected to anyone and you're not connected to any groups, people won't be able to find you. So start connecting with people that you know, and there's a pathway. But you have to. The more connections you have, the easier you'll be found. And look, how good is it that people will come to you and offer you a job? They'll do that on LinkedIn. So it's the reverse of applying for jobs. You know, you can just sit there with a good LinkedIn profile, come up in a search for a recruiter like me, and I'll get you a job. How wonderful is that? So get yourself in the window and get a lot of connections and groups and join groups, relevant groups. Keywords are key. So how people like me will search for you on LinkedIn is a keyword. So whatever job I have, I'll do a keyword. Now, if you don't have, you might, let's say you're a marketing person and I'm typing in demand generation. Now you might do that as part of your job. But you haven't put it on your LinkedIn profile. So you're not coming up, even though you're an experienced marketing person, you do a lot of demand generation, maybe you call it something else, but I can't find you. So it's very important to get all the keywords in the areas that you're good at and you're experienced in and you want to be involved in on there. So the more the better, frankly. So fill it out. Your status. Now, this is a sort of debate I've had with people. I'd always recommend, you know, open to opportunities. There's a new green thing that says open to work. You know, just if you're looking for work, be public about it, certainly on LinkedIn. So make sure your status is open to work, and you can click open to work on your actual status as well as your visuals. Seeking new opportunities. Make sure that's public. Make sure that's clear. You definitely get a photo up there, get a decent photo. It doesn't have to be anything magical, just a decent photo of yourself. And again, you'll get advice on that, but a photo's better. CV, it should really be a CV on there. That's what it is. So try and get a CV. The more detail, the better. And it should be based on what you want. So it's not just about talking about what you've done. It's about focusing that experience on what you want. What do I want to be found for? What do I want to focus on? Well, then make sure that's represented on your LinkedIn profile. The most painful thing for me and for you, I'm sure, is that, you know, I have a job that suits you, but I don't know who you are and I can't find you. You're sitting there saying, I'd love a job. I have the job that you love. You're not on LinkedIn or you're not doing it properly and I can't find you. So eliminate that by just doing a full LinkedIn profile and you'll get there. Okay. So let's jump in. I'm going to give you some general advice. I think this is, again, Rolly asked me, I'm working with Jobcare a number of years. So there's certain trends I've seen, and I've two slides here that's going to focus on those trends. So, you know, you should see yourself in some of these. So they'll definitely help you, I think. And I've experienced, you know, that these are issues that are common to a lot of people. So the first thing is don't devolve. Now, I think that's really important. So like I said, I've seen this, particularly if you're out of work for some time, the head starts to drop. And it's all about getting yourself, as I said, what I did was I got myself action focused. If you can fill in a busy week with progressive stuff that you're doing, it doesn't have to be anything magical, but little steps every week to get you towards helping you be more job ready. Now, this program is fantastic for that, but don't devolve. So look, try and get back mentally. When you get that interview, try and get back to the person you were before you left your last job. That's why people in jobs get jobs, because they kind of turn up and don't need the job. There's that little bit of swagger there, a bit of confidence there. It's that little stuff. So, you know, you have, everybody on this call has that. You just need to make sure and recognize in yourself that you're not sort of slumped, your body language isn't down, all of those things. And again, this program will help you with that. But just recognize it, I guess, and don't devolve. Make sure you go back to who you were, the best of you. It's only a job. So again, I'm going for an interview. I want it. I'm going to prep for it, but it's only a job. Don't be the desperate candidate. Nobody likes to be, I don't want to hire a desperate person. You know, you might really be suitable, but if you're going too heavy, you're going too hard, just cool the jets a bit. It's only a job. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to prep and off I go. But don't be that desperate person, because that's not good either. Kiss a lot of frogs. Now, one of the big issues with a lot of people is you're too selective. So, you know, I'm going to wait for the right job. So, you know, every now and then you send out an application, you're very discerning. That's all fine. But, you know, you need to get busy doing a lot of things. Now, kissing a lot of frogs is about doing a lot of things. So meeting people in your network, you know, improving your LinkedIn profile, doing mock interviews, you know, tweaking your CV. So really just contacting a lot of people through LinkedIn, etc. So there's a whole plan I would put in place. Don't be too discerning is my point. Do lots of action and speak to lots of people, even if it's to get you where you want to go with conversations and cups of coffee. So lots of action. Get candid feedback. I spoke about that. Try and identify, how you can improve. Relevant experience front and center. The world of CVs is about CVs. So very simple. Just make sure everything you want to get across is on page one. So as soon as I get a CV, I'm just like that. But I'll probably spend genuinely 15 seconds. And if I don't see it, I'm moving on, because it needs to be there. It should be front and center. So be aware of that, because that's a recruiter's perspective. If you're a square peg on paper, which you might be in terms of, it's very hard to articulate. My CV is just all over the place. There's a whole strategy you can take. And again, the program will help you with that. It's not my job today in terms of warm intros, seeking referrals, people that know you. Are a great way for you to get a role if your CV doesn't match up. Okay, so just back to recruiters. We can't help you change careers. Don't tar us all with the same brush. Again, the worst recruiter might have the best job. You might end up having 3 bad experiences and then find a fantastic recruiter who'll get you a job. Accept the system. Very, very important for you to know there are jobs out there now. I'm ferociously busy. The team is ferociously busy. We got loads going on here. Now that's just our little corner of the world, but I'd be very, very excited if I were you going into this. A hell of a lot better than this time last year, that's for sure. Moving on to, I guess, the last key point I'd make to you is that one of the biggest mistakes people make, there's going to be people on this call who have done a lot in their careers. Know what you want or pick a spot. If you go to an interview, if you're applying for 3 different types of things and you go to an interview and you're against 2 other people in that interview, most of the time you're not going to get a job. And I'll tell you why. Because your mind's full of stuff rather than the guy who's focused, who says, right, I'm here because this is what I want. I'm genuinely interested in this. I've read about it. I've researched it. That guy is a stronger guy than you, because you'll say, no, I'm interested, I am, but you're just not as good. So try and pick a spot or pick a couple of spots and research and focus on them. Don't be a generalist. Being a generalist won't get you a job. So that's a really important point as well. I put on the slide here, SMEs account for 99.7% of all enterprises in Ireland and employ more than 70% of people working in the private sector. So I've talked a lot about job boards and recruiters and all of that. There's a whole market out there in small to medium-sized organizations that mightn't work with recruiters, or you can go direct to, and certainly you won't deal with the in-house recruiters. So there's a lot of other avenues outside of just the job boards, which I have here. So, and look, again, you'll hopefully go through that in the program later on. So that's it, folks. I just hope there's some nuggets in there for you. I want to wish you every success with your job search. I think you've got you've picked a really good time to get out into the market with restrictions lifting over the next couple of months. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to field any questions you might have.
Ken, thanks very much. Great energy and a great presentation you've brought to us this morning to get everyone starting up their courses. And there's various people on different courses on this watching the stream this morning. So thanks for that, much appreciated. So I will give people a chance to get some questions up in the comments. But I had a couple of things kind of came to me when you were talking, and one was you were talking about beneath the iceberg, and I think there's probably one question is how often do you get a call from a client, saying, and there's something that's not on the job spec, something that they can't put on the job spec? Like, is that something that regularly happens? Do you have an example of that?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I'd actually say 90% of the time, Rolly. So here's the thing. The reason that is, why did they put it on a job spec? So a job spec is what you do in the job. The other stuff under the iceberg is the environment, the culture, the manager, the type of speed in the department, loads of stuff. So the question I always ask is, what are the 3 most important things you need? The answers to those questions, typically 2 of the 3 are not represented on the job spec. And that's because it's very hard to describe. You say fast paced, but there's a whole description around a culture that can't be articulated on a job spec. And that's usually what's missing.
Yeah. So I think then the kind of follow-up question to that is, how does the average person looking at a job spec and not going through an agency deal with that or overcome that? If there's that much beneath the surface?
I think you can't know. You can't know based on a job spec. You can obviously you can operate that way. So all you can do is either talk to a recruiter. If you're dealing with a recruiter, if you're not dealing with a recruiter, try and find somebody who works in that organization or even in the sector. Because typically there's a commonality there, that you can get an insight. So it's about, again, LinkedIn's a great tool. Maybe someone in your network you can connect to that says, hey, your wife worked in that company, didn't she, or that industry? And then you can have a conversation with her, and you can have it's all about just ancillary insights. But you're right, you can only get so much from a job spec. So online is the way to go. But conversations with people is the key way to fill in a lot of those blanks.
Super. Sheila's got a question, and she says, can I ask, does it look desperate applying for the same type of job in the same company if you haven't heard anything from your first application?
I don't think it looks desperate. No, I mean, desperation comes across in as I said, you don't want to come across desperate in an interview. I think what you'd probably do is, if you've applied for a job and you're not hearing back, there's obviously some reason why you're not hearing back, Sheila, right? So I'd be going around a little bit. I'd try to talk to someone in the organization. Just, you need to find out why. And so I certainly wouldn't stop. I wouldn't stop applying. There's no problem with that. But and you're not going to come across desperate. But you'll probably get a no back if they're saying no the first time. So how can I connect to somebody? Or even why don't you write a note to one of the line managers, a very nice note, I'm passionate about your organization, here's why, I'd love to, I might, there's something wrong, I think, on paper, I have applied, but here's why I'm interested, here's why I think I'm suitable. So the more sort of background research you can do, and maybe a personalized note to a line manager, as opposed to recruitment, because they just tick boxes and eliminate you, might be another way for you to go. But you don't come across desperate. It's just you need to maybe change up your approach.
Yeah, and so 2 things on that. One, in general, when I ask people about their journey in their job search, if people are saying, "Oh, I'm not hearing anything back," I'm going, "Okay, well, we need to work on your CV." And then the second one is, "Oh, I send in my CV. I always get called for interview, but I never get any further." Then we generally know as a troubleshooting step that we need to then help people with their interview technique. So you're spot on there. And maybe I'm going to spoil Leon from LinkedIn's thunder, but he applied 7 times to get into LinkedIn, and obviously there's a huge organization here in Dublin. There's a number of different avenues that he worked on, but he applied and he learned and he grew and he figured it out and he built relationships, and there was definitely a journey to get into that place. And what
I say, right, just on that point, there's typically an obstacle. Everybody has one bigger obstacle that's stopping you from getting a job, right? Or certain, everybody has the market, but typically you as a person have one key thing that. So identifying that obstacle is probably the biggest element of getting you a job. So that's why that feedback, understanding, stopping, not following the same approach maybe, and just maybe trying something different. But identifying that obstacle is the key point, and then overcoming that, obviously figuring out a solution.
Sweet. Thanks, Ken. Next question from Kevin. And he said, you mentioned a lot of good recruiters. Do you have any advice on how to go about finding them? And I think that probably ties in with another kind of question I have is, sometimes I remember when I was kind of working with recruiters, they're like, now don't call anyone else. Don't be talking to anyone else. Like I'm the only recruiter you need to be. So like, how do you answer that question and kind of find that balance?
Yes. So I think like definitely there's evidence there. So the evidence of You can have someone who's 1 year in the business and is very good, by the way. But typically longevity is a good sign. First thing. So if you see someone who's been in recruitment for 10 years, and they haven't been in a different job every 6 months, if they've been 4 years here, 2 years here, 3 years there, that's a very good sign of somebody who really knows their stuff. Somebody who's been in the one sector for some time is another big advantage for you. Working in a recruitment company that specializes in your area, is another sign of a good recruitment company. They look well. They typically have a good brand. They look the part is another sign of a good recruiter. But I think in terms of the exclusivity question, I'd always say to people come to me for advice all the time. People I know, clients, etc. And I would say, don't. It's a case-by-case scenario. I mean, yes, if you trust the recruiter, and you think they're going to look after you, and give them a time limit. Listen, I'll give you a couple of weeks. You go and find me a job. Absolutely, I'll work exclusively with a recruiter. But I'd also advise, particularly for senior people, don't just deal with one recruiter. Deal with a number of recruiters. And again, the worst recruiter might have the best job. Every recruiter doesn't own every job out there. So I think. Let a good recruiter work for you, but maybe put a time limit on them. And you'll pretty much know by your interactions with them, if they're good or not, fairly quickly. But the key thing for you to say, just on that point, is keep in contact. You guys need to reach out, develop relationships every couple of weeks. Hi, Bob, just letting you know I'm still looking. I know you're very busy, but look, any roles come in, I'm still here. Without even requesting a response, just being on the recruiter's radar is a key point.
Great, that's super helpful. Pallavi asked, how do you get a job after a career gap?
Well, straightforward enough, Pallavi, these days. Used to be a bit more of a stigma around that. I mean, if you're looking for a job in the same sector that you worked, I mean, it's just explaining. It's very clear, even on CV, career break because of X, Y, and Z. So just make sure that's clear. And then sometimes there might be an upskilling of technology or whatever. So if you're finding a roadblock that you're not getting that for some reason, why am I not? Is there a difference in skills? Maybe there's systems, maybe there's something up to speed that's stopping me. So talk to people in the sector, understand what the gaps are, that maybe you need to do a course or something just to get up to speed. So it's understanding why, but there should be no stigma these days, and there is none. In fact, some companies I know, like Microsoft, etc., are huge on, for example, women who've raised families coming back into the workplace. They're all over trying to get those people, really qualified women, into their companies. There's lots of that going on, and I can see why. So it shouldn't be a stigma, but it might be just in the sector you're working in. There might be a reason or an upskilling issue there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think definitely after the year that we've had, like the amount of people who will have had they've chosen a break, or they've been a break's been forced upon them. And I think I think people are less. I think the problem is a gap in the CV. Like, your nature abhors a vacuum. Your brain will jump to fill a gap in your CV with anything from, convicted, felon to, is off traveling around the world and is a bit flighty. But if it says, I was raised in a family, I was studying, I was looking for work, I could genuinely think it's relatively straightforward to explain it.
Totally agree. It is explaining it. It's just explaining it. So being open and honest. There's no employer, once you've explained it, that's not the issue. The gap is not the issue. Something else is the issue if you're not finding the role.
Absolutely. I'm going to have a look for a couple other questions here. So Porig asked the question, if 70% of jobs are in SMEs, will they not want generalists?
Well, the smaller you go, the more generalist you become. So that's a very good point. And the answer can be yes to that because, in fact, the gap, the problem some people might have is I've done so much in my career and I'm going for this multinational and they're only looking for that. And so I'm not getting any jobs there. So yeah, the flip side is true, where that person with only that skill set won't get a job in an SME because they're not broad enough. So actually it's an advantage. So yes, I mean, obviously every organization is different, But small businesses look for versatility. They look for, you have to do broad roles. So if you're doing marketing, you're doing the whole of marketing. If you're doing accounting, you're doing the whole of accounting. You're not doing one element of it typically. So absolutely. And one thing I'd say to you is that doesn't automatically get you a job, though. So even though you are broad and SMEs look for broad, it's about, articulate that. So you need to sometimes maybe contact people and just explain that and see if they'd be interested in having a conversation with you based on your skills. So there's probably a narrative in between that to get you in the door to allow you to have that conversation. But yeah, broad is great with SMEs.
Sweet, and I've got a great question here from Caroline. When applying for a job and it often says canvassing will disqualify, what's the difference between canvassing and finding someone in the organization or speaking to them, and kind of make contact?
Yeah, so I mean, canvassing, I actually haven't heard that in job outside of maybe public sector, but so canvassing is, Mary, can you get me in there? Listen, I've applied for a job, go down and have a word with Bob. Do you know anyone in HR? You can go down and have a word for me. That's canvassing. So it's proactively talking to someone to advance your cause, as in they go in and they try and influence things. So that's canvassing, where what we're talking about is just research. I'm just trying to understand. Now you've got to be careful that if they've put that on the job spec, and again, I don't hear that much, so maybe that's a public sector thing. I don't do a lot of public sector work. You got to be careful in terms of the perception. So you need to be clear with whoever you're talking to. No, I don't want you to, canvassing is a no-no. So I'm just trying to understand the organization a bit. So doing your research is perfectly fine, but just make sure someone doesn't pick it up the wrong way.
Okay, that's super helpful. And then and I think part of that stems from the idea of, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And there's, I think I'm the same. I've only ever seen it in public sector, but I think there's a lot of, jobs for the boys, type thing. So it's definitely. Oh, it says it's in teaching. Okay, thanks for qualifying that, Colin. But same thing. That may be a requirement of if it's a Department of Education role, that may be something, or it'll I think it'll depend on each of the organizations.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. What else we got? Okay, I would just here. We're out of time. I'm gonna leave it there. That's okay. Ken, thank you so much for your time this morning. That has been really fruitful, insightful session for us, and it's great to have you back on board. Great to have you connected. Thanks again for your time. What's the best way for people to find you and make contact with you?
Yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I just have to say I can't help everybody, directly, but delighted to. If you're looking for a job, send the CV in to me. I'll send it to my colleagues. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Ken Harborn, Wallace Myers, and that's.
And does Wallace Myers cover the entire gamut, or is there a
no?
Specific
Sorry,
sector?
yes, we do. So if you're an architect, if you're in HR, you're an architect, you're an accountant, you're a who else do we have? A retail manager, or you're an engineer in pharmaceutical or life sciences. That there are spaces. So typically, and we do some marketing as well, marketing and sales. So anything like that, look, if you've got a CV in that space, we may be able to help you directly. So delighted to get the resume.
Great, that's really helpful. That'll pinpoint it. We'll send out we'll post up a link for Ken's LinkedIn to make it super easy and obvious for you to be able to find him. But Ken, again, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll catch you again soon.
No problem. Listen, all the best to everybody. We're going to get a job. Good luck with it. Wish you well.
Thanks, Ken. Really, that's a great start to our course. So wherever you are on your course, on your journey with Jobcare, glad to be able to serve you this morning. And can you bring you this great content with Ken? Hopefully that's opened your eyes a little bit to how the prospective journey with recruiters goes. And you'll be able to kind of take a little bit from that, learn from it, and then kind of move on and figure out what steps to make next. That's it for us for Jobcare Live for this week, and we'll be back with you again next week. have a super week. Enjoy your time in your courses and connected to everyone at Jobcare. And we're here to serve you. So please feel free to make contact with LinkedIn, with Ken, with myself, and with anyone else at Jobcare. And if there's any way we can help and support you, please let us know. Have a super week, and we'll see you again next week. Bye now.